Welcome to this week's program as we count down to the South Island Field Days Kirwee, which are obviously at the end of the month, being the 29th through to the 31st of March. On this program, we're going to have a chat with Dennis Carter about things cropping. We're going to have a chat about how you can, in fact, get away with less fertiliser. And also, we're going to be talking about how being involved with the South Island Field Days can open doors for you internationally. But in just a moment, it's farm accounting. Kerry, the budget changes from last year about to kick in.
Yeah, so last year the government announced on the 1st of April this year there's a few changes. So the first is schedule of payments for contractors. So there's a brand new form that's about to come out. So previously...
another form.
Yeah, previously you'd have a form that sort of did employees and contractors all in one go. This time they separated them out to make it a bit clearer. So if you've got a contractor that is subject to the schedule of tax, they have to give you that form. But the big change there also is they get to choose the tax rate. So previously there's sort of a specified type rate. It's now up to them when they fill it out to decide what rate they're going to be using. And
anything below 20 is not allowed?
It can be. There is a question where if they get answer yes to it, they can put down to 10%. So,
but then they've got to pay it.
Well, eventually, yeah, when they do their own tax return, they pay it. But as the person that's using the contractor, yeah, you can just use whatever rate they basically tell you.
So that's the big one?
Yep. The next one is some individuals, if they earn a lot of income, so they've got tax of 50,000 or more, they're now going to be not subject to use of money interest, so it's going to go up from 50,000 to 60. So this is this interest where IRD say, well, you had our money, we're going to charge you for using it, basically. So they've increased that threshold by $10,000 worth of tax every year.
Yeah, and that'll be quite a few people.
It will be, especially those that are doing a lot of farm in their own name. If they are in their own name, the question is why, but that's for another day. But if they are doing their own name, they have got $50,000 worth of tax or more, they will see that they won't be subject to interest anymore, which is a good thing.
Now the Minister's come out with a payroll speech.
Yeah, the Ministry of Revenue came out last week, talked about proposed changes to the payroll system. A while ago, the government announced all these ideas that they had. They've had 90 written submissions and over 1,000 comments on it, and she's come out and said, we've listened to you. So the big one is from the 1st of April 2019, you're going to do payday reporting. So basically, as you do your payroll, you tell IRD what your employees have earned and what the tax is. So there'll be no monthly schedule like you do now. It's as you go. So you're going to be almost forced onto electronic software, basically, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
But because what they're saying is if you're on electronic software, you've got 2 days to get that information into them. If you're not and you're still paper-based, you've got 7 days. So every 7 days you'd be having to fill out a form and submitting it to IRD, and that's just going to take time. Whereas electronic, it'll be 2 minutes and be done.
Mind you, there's some pretty interesting packages now that you guys use.
Yeah, there is, and they're super reliable, all connected to IRD without a hassle. So 2019 is the year to think about having to go onto payroll, which is a big thing.
I would suggest there's going to be a raft of people knocking on your door, actually.
Yeah, they'd be wise to.
Or their chartered accountants.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. The other thing is that they were looking at doing your PAYE every time you did a pay. So at the moment you pay it on the 20th of the month, or if you're a big employer, a couple of times a month. They've actually said, look, no, we're not going to do that. No one liked the idea. We'll just keep it the way it is, so you still pay it the same way, but you just have to report more regularly to them.
Yeah, okay, I can see the merit in that.
Yeah, the advantage of it is if someone's on child support or getting working families or something like that, they've got up-to-date information. They're not almost 2 months further down the track before they find out whether they've had a pay increase or a change of job or something like that. So they're actually going to be able to proactively manage people that are on those sort of taxes.
And I assume ACC will be able to tap into that as well.
Well, yeah, they should be able to give out their invoices more regularly. Rather than sort of lump sums and throughout the year, it should mean that IRD can start feeding the information through them sort of mid-April onwards.
Yeah, I was thinking of a changing jobs sort of scenario.
Yeah,
but they probably don't. We won't go down that. Yeah. Tax feedback, I guess that's all part of it.
Yeah, the Minister in the same speech came out and said, look, we've been transforming the tax system. We've gone and surveyed 4,000 odd businesses to find out what they think since 2013 the change we've made. They've had 25% of people say that they've spent less time doing taxes. So they're saying, look, that's a big positive. That was the aim of it all. They're saying in-house costs for a lot of people reduced. But the big one was that 50% of people say it's now less stress for them to do their taxes. Then they find it probably a bit more enjoyable, I think, is the thing, because it's easier and easier to do.
And that is important, because if it's complicated, you put it off.
Yeah, you just put it off, and you end up in a bigger mess, and them, actually having a go at doing it. And then we have to come and pick up the pieces and negotiate with IRD and get them out of trouble basically, which is what no one wants to do. It's better to get it do it as you go sort of thing.
I'm astounded that people try to have a go at themselves. I mean, I would just go.
Yeah, they do. We've got a case in our office at the moment where someone did the taxes for 2 years and totally got it wrong, and now we're spending hours trying to work out exactly what they did, and got the audit with IRD to go through because they've picked up that they were wrong, and they went, "Oh, I thought I was doing the right thing. Didn't realise there's all these things I missed."
Yeah, and it could have cost them a lot of money.
It's going to, yes.
Yeah, and they would have missed out on a whole lot of money as
Yes.
well. Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me, there's been a naughty boy that shouldn't have been.
Yeah, we've got an tax agent in Wellington. They've basically swindled IRD out of $750,000. They're not a chartered accountant, so they're one of these people that sort of just do your tax returns, but they haven't got the full qualifications like an accountant does. She thought she was being clever by deliberately doing stuff to sort of hide things and overstate claims, hide income, etc. And IRD came in over a 4-year period and audited her, and found that she'd ripped them off by over $750,000.
So who's liable there? I mean, obviously,
Which
the tax agent is.
She is, because she's the one that did all the work, and it's sort of related to her businesses. The thing is that she's got no assets to actually for IRD to recover it, so she's just going to end up bankrupt, and IRD will just lose that money. They've paid it out, and they'll never get it back.
So, but the clients who
the clients, they're an innocent party basically, so they will be required to pay some tax back, but they can't be held liable for the action of the agent.
No, but it's going to cost them.
It's going to cost them. There is 4 other businesses that are still associated with it that are being prosecuted at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But she certainly thought she's been clever and got caught.
The emphasis was she wasn't a chartered accountant.
Yes. Yeah, there's 2 types of sort of tax people. There's your chartered accountants who have formal qualifications and have to have formal education every year, and then there's somebody that can be a tax agent where basically they can file your tax return on your behalf with IRD, but they don't have the same knowledge or skill base.
Getting close to the South Island Field Days Kerwee at the end of the month, you've got the place looking very nice.
Yeah, we have. We've got irrigation going on now, getting the site nice and green, as well as a timely bit of rain to get the crops ready for the demonstrations.
Demonstrations are a very major part.
Yeah, it's a big part that we pride ourselves on. We like to have a big array of demonstrations, from mowing to raking, baling, and this year we're even going to have silage choppers in action as well.
So you've got people obviously who donated a whole lot of seed and are looking after crops for you.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, Seed Force have been great in terms of providing the seed, and Dave Walsh as well, providing the crop management for the fodder beet, and also had Corson Seeds provided the seed for the maize crop.
The same demonstrations every day for the 3 days?
Yep, same program will be running every day, exactly the same time, and hopefully it all goes well.
Now, you've even got tractor demonstrations, or how would you put it as far as judging the tractors?
Yeah, so what's happening this year, the Farm Trader magazine are doing a top tractor shootout, and they'll be testing the Vario tractors this year, so there'll be road testing, cultivation testing, there's a dyno testing PDO, there's cab comfort, a range of different tests that they do, yeah.
And you've got a competitive side as far as fencing is concerned?
Yeah, there's 2 fencing competitions. There's a young farmers one and an open fencing competition that'll be happening here during the field days.
So it's not just wandering around a whole lot of sites with different machinery and things on sites, is it?
No, well this year, to broaden the horizons, we've got the lifestyle section as well, but I think it'll be a challenge to probably see everything in a day. So we're looking to cover as many different things that the rural public demands.
And it's all done by 30 volunteers?
Yep, it is. It's a bit hard to believe sometimes, but we do all volunteer our time. We've all got businesses and jobs outside of the Field Days Committee, but we enjoy putting it on for people, and it wouldn't happen without the volunteers.
You wouldn't have been able to come up with the number of hours that you've put in, for example?
No, there is a lot of time that people put into this, and the committee appreciates the exhibitors supporting us with our event. Yeah.
Because, just I'm just thinking about the fuel bill that you've got travelling to and from on those regular occasions.
Yeah, that's right. We that's all out of our own pocket. Yeah, we do. Yeah, have a tidy wee sum sometimes.
I don't think we'll count, Dan. No.
No, that's right.
But anyway, it's all very worthwhile, and it becomes a city very soon, and then it becomes farmland again not long after that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Tony Redmond, the neighbour across the road, he leases it in the outside of field days time. He's done a great job to get it ready, and also, yeah, within the next week or so, there'll be a lot of marquees, everything going up, and it does become, yeah, like say, a little city.
$15 to get in, it's not much.
No, we think it's good value, Rob. Yeah.
Well, you wanted rain, Tony. You got it.
Yep, this is a very, very good start. It is the perfect rain to get. If you compare this to what the North Island had, for example, where they're getting 30 and 40 millimetres an hour, large amounts of that rainfall just simply ran off. The source.
We've got to give them our sympathy.
We do have to give them our sympathy. I mean, it's a terrible rainfall event to get. I mean, they were desperately in need of rain, but not at 30 or 40 millimetres an hour, because it ran off. It took everything with it. Fences get wiped out. It's just those are terrible rains to get. The rain that we're getting on the east coast parts now is the perfect rain. It's arriving at sort of 2 or 3 millimetres an hour. It's gone on now for 30 something hours, and it's all going into the ground, which is a very, very good start for what I talked about when I was last on the program. We've got these very depleted groundwater levels all over Canterbury and parts of the eastern North Island as well.
It's a big start, but only a small step.
It is only a small step. I mean, if you look at the rainfalls we've had so far in the Canterbury region, it's everything from about 35 millimetres up to about 55 millimetres. If it goes on for another day or so, then we might, those 55s might turn into 60s and 65s, and the 35s will turn into 40s. But it's a great start. It means that for it to happen in March, it means that we can then hopefully look forward to some more substantial rainfalls in that May and June period to give us some recharge back into the groundwater system.
Will it have stopped some people irrigating?
There will be there will be some areas of certainly if you go to the North Island, for example, definitely don't need to irrigate again. Probably in the Waikato Bay of Plenty, Pukekohe, those sorts of areas. I think they're probably done.
Yeah, I reckon.
They've probably actually lost soil off there and taken some crop with them. Certainly in the Hawke's Bay area, I think there's large areas of the Hawke's Bay area now that we're done with irrigating. Crops will get through. You've got to remember we're almost at the equinox. We're only 8 or 9 days away from the equinox now, so that's 12 hours day, 12 hours daylight, 12 hours night, and then we're on the downward swing from there on, and demand has started to drop off a lot. So you get your soil profiles full again. We're probably sort of on the better soils. We're probably 20 or so days away from having to irrigate again now. So that will take us into April, which means that you'd have to have some amazing weather to be enticed to irrigate again on those deeper soils everywhere. That takes some pressure off the irrigation. You're never far away from a drought on the rest of the stony soils around the eastern parts of New Zealand, and especially here in Canterbury. We'll wait and see what happens after this rainfall finishes, and whether we go into another dry spell and get some very, very, very warm temperatures again.
Has it caught many cropping farmers?
A lot of the harvest is done. If you go into the southern parts of Canterbury, north of Otago, there's still a bit of cereal around that hadn't been harvested. And we're sitting around now waiting to do radish and carrot seed and red clover and a few other bits and pieces. But most of the crops are in, done, dusted, and those crops that are left, we're looking for some lengthy settled periods actually to harvest things like, especially things like hybrid radish and the hybrid carrot seeds. They're relatively slow to harvest in the field, and we're going to need some longer stable periods of weather to be able to harvest them and make a good job of them.
And I guess some of the grape growers will be wanting some sunshine.
They'll definitely want sunshine. This has not been, particularly in the South Island, this has not been a great vintage to date. The raisin, the ripening process is all over the place. In Central Otago, for example, they're dropping crop to try and get their crop loadings down so that they can enhance that ripening process. When you get down to 3 or 3.5 tonnes to the hectare, that's not a lot of wine coming off those areas. So they just want some really nice settled Indian summer weather now. Warm days, cool nights, bring up the flavours, bring up the colours, and then they can crack into it at Easter. Yep.
You make it sound so simple, but Mother Nature's not necessarily going to listen to Tony Dameron.
Absolutely not. I mean, even if you go into Central Otago, they had a pretty cool day over the weekend and some rain, so they probably didn't really want that, but you can't dial it up, I'm afraid.
No. Your thoughts on underground reserves now?
Yeah, look, they're still extremely low. This rainfall will not give us any recharge to the groundwater. I mean, there's no question there. I mean, our deficits are too large. We're looking. This is a great start to get the soil profile, the root zone of most of the pastures and crops, get them back to field capacity. It's the follow-ups that we get from now until into the May-June period that will actually give us the recharge into the groundwater system. So, great start, long way to go.
Any thoughts on snowfall? Because is anybody like NIWA predicting snow?
Haven't seen any of those predictions yet. The predictions, the last 3-month forecast, I think it was out, was still for above average temperatures. So it's a bit early to start thinking about that. Snow in May goes away anyway, Rob.
Yeah, but I love the way that NIWA, bless their hearts, will say a normal or just below normal, whatever the hell normal is.
Yeah, we're not sure about normality, so. This is certainly not normal for us. If you look at where this rainfall event came from, wasn't the tail end of a tropical cyclone. It just it's an unusual event, and our hearts do go out for the people in the North Island with the intensities like they had. They were the killers.
And that was pretty widespread up there.
It was very widespread up there. Yeah. So, but yeah, great start. Long way to go.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. Just a moment or two, we'll be talking to Dennis Carter about things that are happening with Roundup, and you'll definitely want to catch that. Dennis, water is a magical thing, but it's not necessarily the total answer.
No, not at all, Rob, and I'm a bit worried about some of the new farmers in CPW area that will be...
Canterbury Plains.
Canterbury Plains, yep, water plains, yes, indeed. They'll be getting water for the first time, some of them, and thinking that that's the absolute silver bullet. Well, you can believe you me that no, it's not. There's a heck of a lot more to getting the best utilisation out of water than just keep pouring it on to light to medium land. And I've been watching a few astute cropping operators around the place over the last sort of 20-30 years, and they do a lot more to ensure the efficiency of water than just keep pouring it on the same soil. And what I'm really talking about is recognising the sheer value of the crop residues that are out there, and of course turning them into something usable is quite a long-term thing, but extremely valuable. And so turning that crop residue by chopping and increasing the surface area and leaving it on top of the soil rather than ploughing it under is the way to go. And I've seen farmers building up layers and layers of basically peat or humus on top of the ground over years, and the main thing is to get it into a condition where you can actually drill another crop through it. And of course the drills, the operation of the drills and the type of drills that are out there have come a long way in terms of direct drilling into this type of residue that's left on top of the soil, and that residue breaks down and becomes available itself in the form of organic nitrogen over time. It is quite a sponge in terms of absorbing the the water that is put on, so you get better utilisation. It stays near the surface and holds it for you. And of course, it's a wonderful environment for the likes of worms to establish.
So what you're talking about is a mulch, isn't it?
It is a mulch, and it takes years and years to build up the really good stuff, but it's sort of the burning of stubbles and things like that. You think, well, okay, how much phosphate and how much potash and what am I losing? And there is quite a bit, and even carting off that residue in the form of straws and things like that. That's valuable material leaving your gate. So really, adding that to the water over time will improve your soil a lot more than just carting it off or ploughing it under or destroying it. It does not mix through into the layers that you can use as well.
Okay, let's change the subject. Grass grubs and nasties.
Yes, Rob. This time of year, the grass grubs are really tearing into things. They've hatched since about November, December, January, and now they're starting to grow rapidly, and they're voracious under the soil. And a lot of people are putting in insecticides and things like that with establishing new crop, and that's pretty good stuff to do as well. But they do come in when the first frosts start attacking, especially the likes of an old clover field and old pasture, and of course with irrigation keeping the soil nice and moist and a cover on there, the survival of the eggs is quite high. And so about March, April, definitely May, farmers start to say, is that the frost that's taken all my feed? Well, no, there's been a lot of chomping going on underneath. So,
and on the top with piranhas, I guess.
Yes, well, the piranhas, they come out and feed on a warm night. They come out from quite deep down. In the dry, they go just deeper. They come up and they get quite big, and 4 piranha per square metre is the equivalent of a ewe per square metre. A ewe per acre.
Whew.
So they are voracious. They eat a lot of feed and they grow very, very quickly. But there's some clever insect regulators that you can spray on that puts them into a straitjacket, and they can't shed their skins to grow through to the next stage. So that's the modern way to control those little beasties.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what about rats and mice? We don't talk about them much.
No, well, this time of the year, the autumn, we like to come inside and get tucked up and warm, and so do they. They come in from the fields in bulk, and they're looking for a dry place to live and nest and where there's feed, and often farmers' wool sheds and granaries and places like that. Even your house, now's the time they're trying to get indoors, so deal to them. There's some pretty clever stuff out there, but keep it away from your pets.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Now, what is happening with Roundup? Because there's some pretty amazing things hurtling around.
Well, there certainly is, Rob, and the world's about to hear and see a lot more of this in the next few months. And what's actually happening is that the price of Roundup's gone up for a start, because it's under real pressure, and some countries are looking at banning it, some are restricting the use of it. And in Europe, 2/3 of the Europeans are in favour of banning it, and they're actually talking about doing that by June. So watch this space in terms of food production, because glyphosate has been the mainstay of a lot of total vegetation control, as well as strategic control of things like cooch, twitch, for the last 40 years. And take that away, and what it will be replaced with, nobody knows. There are some sort of similar type things out there, but they're not as good as translocating.
So why suddenly this focus?
Well, this is, you know how you can measure parts per billion these days, and residues and things like that. There's a lobby group out there that think they can find it in all sorts of things, but it's been very, very safe and proven safe to humans for many, many years. So there's going to be a battle on between the scientists of who's right, who's wrong, whether it's going to go out of existence. But if it does, the price of food is just going to go through the roof, both horticultural produce and arable produce.
Dennis, thank you very much indeed. Just a moment or two, we'll be finding out how a young lady who is a member of the SIDF, or South Island Field Days Kerwee Committee, had doors suddenly open. Michaela, you've been involved with the South Island Field Days Kerwee Committee for a while now, but it's opened a very important door for you.
So the committee they really like to see the professional development of their committee members. So back in 2013 I was able to participate in the Kellogg Rural Leadership Program, and the South Island Field Days Committee helped me fund that. It was really valuable.
And you're also doing research here, you're leasing a very small pocket.
Yeah, so my business is to run agronomy trials, and the South Island Field Days allow me to lease just half a hectare of land here in order to run some of these trials.
So what are the trials? What are you doing?
So the trials I have here, I have currently about 130 plots of different grass, and it's a NFVT trial, so that's the National Forage Variety Trial Program, and it's one trial of many run across the country, and the data is pooled and used towards the Dairy NZ Forage Value Index. That's a cultivar selector tool available online.
So these are all unnamed and so therefore very new.
Yeah, most of them are breeding lines. Some of them will see the commercial light of day, but others won't.
It's a pretty cutthroat sort of thing, isn't it? You either measure up or you get ploughed in.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting watching a lot of them. Some of them you can tell are really clearly very good, quick to establish, and winter growth is also really good. So even though they all look quite similar, they are actually quite different.
And you're doing production rather than palatability at this stage?
Yes, that's right. So we're just measuring yield, and to do that we'll take a mower measurement using a rotary mower, just simply straight up the middle of the plots, and we'll weigh that and take a subsample, and from there I can calculate the dry matter production per hectare.
You don't worry about ME values and that sort of thing at this stage?
ME is measured for the Dairy NZ Forage Value Index, not necessarily from this trial, but from a specialist trial.
And of course, the aeroplanes flying over it, they're able to look down into it, but there's some pretty good swaths there.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these are doing really well.
So when will they see the marketplace, do you think?
So this trial runs for 3 years. It's been in the ground for close to 1. So the data from this won't be put towards the system for another 2 years yet. But already in the year that these have been in the ground, some of these plots are now named varieties available on the market.
And in the meantime, you're still working very hard as a volunteer for the South Island Field Days Kiwi.
Yeah, we're less than 22 days away, I think, now to the event, and I'm really looking forward to being part of the Ag Innovation Awards this year.
So what's involved with that?
So any exhibitor here can enter the award. We've got close to 15 entries. I can't really tell you too much about what those entries are because some of the products are so new that it's quite sensitive. So a lot of these things will just be announced at the field days.
Scott, big focus on nitrates and less being spread over New Zealand.
Yeah, the problem's not that hard. Kidneys have got a job to do, which is to get rid of excessive protein. If we pour more protein, and every bit of research that I've seen says that we don't need any more than 18% protein, which on a herbage test is about 2.8% of nitrogen in a standard herbage test that a farmer would see. And yet the figures showing for lush growth are between 4 and 5. So that means 30% protein. So the solution to our leaching problems and environmental problems is not reducing cows, it's actually reducing protein levels. At 30% protein, a 300 cow farm on 100 hectares has got an extra roughly 71 tonnes of urea, which the cows don't need, so therefore they excrete it. And when you come back and you start looking at that excess over, you end up with leaching around 90 kilos a hectare, roughly, as a guideline. if you reduce the protein levels and you increase the energy in the grass and you get the grass to grow naturally, then your leaching comes back to less than 30. We don't really have a problem. So that means getting your nitrogen levels in your pastures down to about 3.2%. Now what happens is the panic button goes on and people go, I've been told to get this level to grow the grass. If you don't have biological support for grass growth, in other words, there are certain groups of organisms in the soil that produce growth stimulants for the plant. If you don't have that, then you have to pour nutrients on at high levels to try and get growth. But if you do, you can get down at 3.2%, which is bringing the leaching right down, because the extra that the kidneys are getting rid of is not so concentrated, and you can grow more grass. So
The first question that people are going to be saying is, yeah, right, but how?
well, there's been going on for a long time around the world in pockets, and it's growing. But here we have a situation where we have pretty stubborn thinking towards nutrients. Nutrients, that's been drilled into our heads. But we use certain biological products that we manufacture, and we've had independent testing on. We've done 40 field trials. So scientifically you could say that we've actually got some pretty good evidence to say that this stuff can grow more than urea. After that, as the biological systems in the soil begin to multiply, we can reduce the inputs hugely. There's a process called mineralization, which is in every standard textbook, which brings nutrients out of large reserves in the soil into the available plant pool. And that means the plant can get at it, but we don't end up with the same leaching losses and runoff losses from phosphates and nitrogen, etc.
Now, you've been banging your head against the wall for about 17 years. How are you going to change the habits of 4 generations?
I'm not sure we're going to. But the problem is at the moment, and it's really clear to some of our scientists who are not paid by or supported with corporate sponsorship money. And that's a massive problem, because you end up seeing the science and you go, well, that's only going to have one outcome, which is going to support the corporate still. And that's part of the problem with paying. All we can do is keep offering a solution and hope that the farmers will see that we're not trying to put a noose around their neck with one hand and trying to show them a positive way with the other. And that's really what's been going on for 20 years. We've known about the leaching problem for over 20 years. And we know that from science from a long time ago that protein levels affect the outputs, and that's what the kidneys are for. They get rid of it. And yet nothing has been said to try to stop us getting to a point where the rivers are getting so deteriorated with things like cyanobacteria, which are shockers. Nothing's really been done, and yet we've known about it. So the people who have been wise to the problem have remained silent. And I don't see that changing, so we're trying to get a point across. We're a small voice, but I know that we make far more sense than what has been done so far.
The other thing, the other thing I guess is that the regional councils are bringing a big stick out and saying, this is legal now, you cannot put X number amount on there.
Yes, I see Environment Southland are going to lead the way there, I think. They've got a bit more courage than Environment Canterbury. And
A bit more courage.
I think Environment Canterbury are just rather pathetic with what they're doing, but they know the solution. This is the other frustrating thing. When you talk to some of the people in there, they know the solution, but the commissioners don't want to go in that direction. So you go around different parts of it.
Is this a popularity thing? They want to be voted back in again next year?
I don't really know. I really don't know, but some of the people I've spoken to do know what the answer needs to be done, and yet they're being hamstrung to actually proposing those solutions by directions that commissioners want to go in versus what actually really needs to be done. So
The other point I'd like to make
controversial statements today.
Yeah,
but,
it is actually, yeah.
But it's really frustrating from my point of view, and what it does is that unless we actually go in the direction that we really need to go in, we get every other solution which is not going to solve the problem. Fencing off rivers that haven't been a problem from dryland cattle for 100 years. All of a sudden they've got to be fenced. Every cost to the farmer that doesn't really have to go in there. There's still some good things going on. We have to fence off some things, but unless you get protein levels under control, you can go down to 2 cows a hectare, you'll still have 47 tonnes roughly of urea being lost, and yet at 3 cows with low protein you'll have 16 or 17. It doesn't solve the problem by reducing cow numbers. We have to solve the protein problem.
The interesting thing is that the younger farmers now are probably more susceptible to listening to other things.
Yes, the sort of below 30-year-olds, if they've not been too ingrained by our institutions, are listening. The 40 to 50-year-olds tend to be, unless they've got their own farms, extremely blind and dollar-driven entirely, and not listening too well. Over 55, they listen quite well. The problem is in my age group.
Nothing I can say to that, Scott. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, he is a problem child. But anyway, in just a moment or two, we're going to be looking at a very good scheme, I think, when Rangiora High School students are meeting cattle and becoming very confident at leading them. You've got lowline cattle, and they're known for their nature, and you're bringing in town students.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
Well, this is largely stems from the way lowlines are treated in Australia, which is the birthplace, the home of lowlines. And a lot of schools over there actually have their own lowline studs. And that's where I was first introduced to this concept of school children handling cattle, growing up with these cattle, breaking them in, taking them to shows, and going into on from that to become cattle judges and handlers and run their own studs. So we approached Rangiora High and were very well received, and so we started off as a trial some years ago now with just a handful of students who came out here, and it was a learning experience for both of us because I wasn't too sure how this... My wife said, now, you are really looking for trouble. You're taking somebody else's kids with cattle into a public arena. This is going to be rather like herding cats, isn't it, you know?
Osh springs to mind.
Oh, it does indeed. And it is very much a thing we have to do. We start... Each year we start with them with not a fully new group now, because we've got some that have been there from the third form or
Whatever it is now.
third form, fourth form, fifth form, and they're just passing on. But the group keeps getting refreshed from the bottom. But in the early days, they were all pretty new to it. And as I said to the kids, I always say, now, they may look small, they're only little, but it'll actually weigh more than you, it's faster than you, and it's stronger than you. Never forget it. Unless you've got that animal trusting you, you're always going to have a problem. And this is what we do. We just take the animal into the crush, and they stand there with a kid on each side, talking and patting to them. That's the first day, just that. Then rubbing them down with a brush. Next day we might put a halter on it and tie it in the crush with a halter on, so it gets used to that. And then we'll take it out there, and the kids are standing at the fence with the animal. And then gradually they'll start walking them around in those yards there, and then eventually it's out into a paddock. That's always a big moment for everybody. And eventually they're taking them to shows and handling them. So.
And these are town children?
Most of them are. Some of them are off lifestyles. We had one or two in the first year that were actually genuine country kids. But most of them are town-based. It's surprising how popular it is with the town-based ones. But having said that, two of our girls have gone on to go into studs of their own and are showing on their own account now. Neither of them had any association with cattle. One had ridden ponies before, so wasn't unused to bigger animals, but had no association with cattle till they came here. Now they're running their own studs. The other thing is that they've learnt that there is a future in it, at least in the short term. We've had ones from here have won trips to Sydney Royal Show. Last year there were two of the girls of our team, one who'd won the trip at Canterbury and her sister, both went to Future Beef and Fielding and were leading cattle up there. Another girl has been across to Rockhampton to Beef Week in Rocky in Queensland, which is the second biggest cattle exposition in the world. There's one bigger in the States. And this year another lass is off to Eka, to the Royal Brisbane Show. And it's all just through doing what they do here. They also get the competition in the team handlers at Canterbury. Rangiora last year was first and third in the team's competition for handling, and they rather like doing that. And yeah, it's great to watch them develop. And we've got some who are definite town girls who are just smitten with the idea of breeding cattle. And as long as you get that grounding right, they learn very quickly, and they touch wood. None of them have actually lost respect for the animal. Well, you know, they're always wary.
Be spoken to pretty quickly if they do.
Oh, they do. And it is an OSH thing we've got to be aware of all the time. But it's like they've got to bring boots. They're not allowed sand shoes or any light footwear in the yards with the animals, that sort of thing. But they have got to, or have come to, actually respect the animals and get that bond with an animal. And very quickly now they're sort of picking out their own one from the starters, as it were, and they'll take them through. And I mean, the big bull in there is Rising 4, and he's got the same lass who's in this group as right with him, and she actually has had photographs taken of her sitting astride him, riding him. Not over hurdles, I might add, but no, just sitting astride him while he's in the pen.
Gillian, you've been doing this with students now for quite some time.
7 or 8 years at Rangiora High, yes.
It's a pretty new concept, even though it's been going for 8 years.
At the start there were about 3 high schools involved, us and Boys High and Girls High combined, but now there's quite a few coming on. We have about 8 schools competing every year, and it's getting tougher and tougher each year as they get more and more experienced.
It must be really rewarding for you as a teacher to watch them blossom.
Our girls in the rural area, a lot of them just sit back sometimes and let the boys take command, but with this it lets the girls come out and shine because they can actually see they can handle the animals and they're doing a good job at it.
And they thoroughly enjoy it. You can't get enough for them coming out here.
They're out here every week, twice a week, having a great time.
Rewarding for them, obviously.
Yeah, it's very rewarding for them because they get to actually mature with as far as relating with other people go. They get confidence in public speaking, and they stand in front of all the adults that are watching the competition on the Friday and judge animals and say why they've rated them how they have.
It's very important for a young student to actually be a show person and actually being able to speak off the cuff in front of a whole lot of people who are strangers.
Yes, and at the very start they find it hard, but they get a lot of training by Phil and Kay, and they come down here every week and they actually show them how to do all that sort of stuff. But on the day, it's still quite daunting for some of them, but they do a great job trying and they do really well.
You're one very proud teacher.
Yes, I've actually watched it grow over the last 7 or 8 years. And at the start we weren't too sure, the kids weren't too sure, but now they're all knocking down the door every year asking when we're starting. So they're keen as mustard.
And we are still getting more and more suicides. Why?
I'm going to simplify it, Rob, and keep it to 2 main reasons. Reason number 1 is our sense of self-worth or value is tied to what we have. For instance, often people I'll say to my clients, well, finish the sentence for me. I'm good enough if, or I'm good enough when. And the answers I get are like, well, if I've got a partner who loves me, or if I've got a house, or if I've got a good job, or if I've got this much income. And the problem with that is if we haven't got that, then consequently we're not good enough.
And we're not happy.
And we're not happy. And of course if we all have ups and downs in life, but if your sense of self-worth is tied to what is or isn't happening, then you're never going to be happy when there's a down.
So everybody right now, right at this minute, should be saying, I am happy because
I'm good enough just as I am. I don't need to have this to be good enough. I am good enough as I am. For instance, often I'll say to my clients, if you won lotto today, would you be a better person tomorrow? And they go, no, of course not. I'll be the same person. And I said to them, well, if you went bankrupt today and lost your relationship as well, and lost everything, would you be a worse person tomorrow? And they desperately want to say yes, but they can't because I've just said no to the question about winning lotto.
That's a trick way of putting it, isn't it? But what you're doing is saying to them, look in the mirror.
Yeah, because I say to them, look, you would be a person with less, but you wouldn't be less of a person. And the problem is people who commit suicide are tying their sense of self-worth to what they've got or what they've achieved, and they feel like they're not good enough. And when we feel not good enough, it's very hard to get out of that place if we haven't got the skills to do so.
Thank you, because you're actually making a lot of sense, and a lot of people will be starting to relate to this, because you get a young farmer, married, children, and all of a sudden he goes and does something stupid, what we call stupid, but he's a passenger at that point.
Yes, he's possibly thinking, well, what will my friends, my colleagues think? What will people will judge me? Because if we judge ourselves, we just assume that other people will judge us just as harshly, but normally we judge ourselves more harshly than anyone else. And if we think that we're not good enough, what's the point of carrying on?
Okay, because I mean this is a very sensitive thing, and there will be people who are watching here who, unbeknown to us, will be sitting there thinking, what method am we going to use, or what method am I going to use? So ask themselves.
I think we've got to ask ourselves what makes you good enough. And I almost want to sort of do the whole inverted bracket thing, because your idea of good enough, it will be different from mine. If we ask 10 different people, they'll all have a different idea of what good enough is. But I mentioned, Rob, that there was two main reasons why people will commit suicide. And I want to cover the second reason in case we run out of time. Second reason is your level of happiness before we start. Because we all have life's up and downs, right? But if my level of happiness is quite high and I get a down, yes, I'm going to fall, but not too far. And because my level of happiness is quite good, I'm going to bounce back up fairly quickly. But someone whose level of happiness is already low, when a down happens, they're going to fall right to the bottom, and they're not going to know a way of getting back out because they haven't got those skills. So the answer to not, if, say for instance, both of us went through the same horrendous situation, say we both lost our jobs and our relationships, then you and I would behave quite differently, as would, 10 different people in the room would behave differently, because we've all got different starting places. So the answer is to increase your level of happiness and resilience first before the bad times happen.
I found in my history that when things start going wrong, it goes real wrong. You'll get one whack around the ears, and the next thing you know, you get another one and another one and another one. And it always seems to come one after the other. And are we attracting negatives because we are?
We can. If we expect the worst, well, I'm a great believer in the law of attraction. You get what you expect, what you think, what you believe, and what you expect. Researchers have found that people who have a high level of happiness or resilience, when something bad happens, they see it as one part of the jigsaw, not the whole jigsaw. And they see it as short-term, not long-term. Whereas people who have a lower level of happiness when something bad happens, they see it as all-encompassing, like the whole jigsaw, and they see it as long-term and permanent.
Okay, I mean, there's a line that I use, which is, to trip and fall is life, getting back up again is living.
Yes.
But it's not easy.
No, it's not. But if you expect that things will get better, which not everyone has that skill, because that's a skill I teach. If you have that skill, you will be able to handle the first clip around the ear hole and the second and the third and still get back up. And people who are committing suicide don't have that ability because no one's taught them how.
Okay, that is a major point. Nobody has taught them, A, to be happy, but B, how to get back up again.
Yes.
And it's, I've been down there, it's black.
Mm-hmm. And it is a learned skill, as we know. You've heard me say that before. Only 10% of your happiness has anything to do with what's happening in your life. So yes, bad stuff happens that's going to bring you down, but that's got only 10% of your happiness. The rest is under your control if you've been taught how. And if your parents didn't teach you, how could you know?
There'll be people waiting for this big flash of light. They're hearing what you're saying. They're saying, yes, you can learn, but they're waiting for the flash of light. What's the flash of light?
Well, if I can give a shameless plug, This is what I help people to do. Go to my website, setfree.co.nz.
Setfree.co.nz.
As in open the cage door and set the bird free, because not everyone understands my my accent, which is a good Kiwi accent, but the Americans and the Australians don't always understand it. So setfree.co.nz, and there's information there about how you can get help. And of course there's my book, shameless plug again, which actually teaches people how to be happy.
Because you can learn.
You can learn, absolutely you can learn. But you need to learn before the bad times. Well, it's not too late if you're going through bad times now, but get help now, don't wait.
Because it's actually really, really important.
You've got to have that high level of happiness and resilience before you get clipped around the ear hole a few times.
The other thing, I guess, is to walk away from drama and those who cause it.
Definitely you want to be around people who are happy. There's some really interesting research that shows that if you live within about 20, this is American research, if you live within about 2 miles of someone who's happy, you are happier. That is weird, right? So if that's true, just your neighbours, it makes more sense to associate yourself with positive, happy people. So when stuff goes wrong, they are also able to help you up and say, look, it's not going to last. Things are going to get better. And this doesn't mean anything about you.
Karen, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
If we have saved one person's life,
I hope so.
It's been well worth it.
Yes.
Now, if you'd like to go over what Karen was saying or any of the other interviews that we've done today, you can go to our website, which is ontheland.co.nz. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed the program, but it will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.